War destroys everything. Cities, armies, and even nations. But this is the story of a machine that refused to die. A tank born in World War II, expected to last only a few years. Yet it fought through 5 different wars, under 3 different flags, across 2 different continents. And today, nearly 80 years later, it still runs. This is the unbelievable story of the tank that outlived its enemies, its creators, and even modern technology. Welcome back to Silent Conflict. The year is 1942. World War II is at its peak, and the world is on fire. Nations are desperate for a tank that can be built fast, cheap, and in massive numbers. The Americans introduced the M4 Sherman, a tank many soldiers joked was made of tin, but engineers praised as a masterpiece of simplicity. It wasn't the strongest, it wasn't the fastest, it wasn't the most armored, but it had something no other tank had. Incredible reliability, parts that were available everywhere, and an almost miraculous ability to be repaired right in the middle of a battlefield. Engineers designed it not for brute force, but for endurance. They knew that a fancy, powerful tank that breaks down is just a useless metal box. The Sherman, however, was different. Its engine was a modified aircraft engine, powerful but straightforward. Its suspension was robust, designed to handle rough terrain without snapping. And most importantly, almost every part was interchangeable. You could take a piece from one broken Sherman and use it to fix another. This philosophy of mass production and simple, rugged design meant that no matter where the war went, the Sherman followed. From the scorching deserts of Africa to the frozen forests of Europe, it became the workhorse of the Allied forces. And while many tanks became famous for their power, the Sherman would become famous for something else entirely: its refusal to quit. The Sherman first tasted battle in the sands of North Africa, facing off against Rommel's legendary panzer divisions. From there, it pushed through the rugged mountains of Italy, landed on the beaches of France during D-Day, and fought through the hedgerows of Normandy. It battled in the snows of Belgium during the Battle of the Bulge, and was one of the first tanks to roll into Germany. It even fought across the Pacific, supporting island-hopping campaigns against Dugan Japanese forces. Hundreds were destroyed, thousands burned. The crews knew its armor was thin, but they also knew its engine would rarely fail them. And one particular tank of the tank in our story rolled across Europe with the US Army. We'll call it Old Ironsides. It survived direct hits from brutal anti-tank guns, artillery barrages that turned the landscape into a lunar surface, and lived through battles where almost every other vehicle in its company was destroyed. Each scar on its hull told a story of survival. By 1945, as the war in Europe ended, this Sherman wasn't just a tank, it was a veteran, a survivor forged in the crucible of the world's deadliest conflict. But its incredible journey was only just beginning. After World War II, the world was flooded with surplus military equipment. Thousands of Shermans, now considered obsolete by the US Army, were sold, scrapped, or gifted to Allied nations. Our tank, Old Ironsides, was loaded onto a cargo ship, its American markings painted over. It was shipped across the Atlantic, not to a museum, but to the Middle East, where a new conflict was already brewing. It now served under a new flag, in a region preparing for one of the most important wars of the 20th century, the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The newly formed Israeli Defense Forces were desperate for any armor they could get their hands on. They acquired Shermans from scrapyards all over the world. Our tank found itself in their arsenal. Its simple design once again proving to be its greatest asset. Israeli mechanics, with limited resources, could keep these old tanks running when newer, more complex models would have been impossible to maintain. Once again, this Sherman was thrown into the chaos of close-quarters combat. It fought against other World War II-era tanks, this time in the hands of its enemies. And once again, it survived. While modernizing weapons were destroying many older tanks, this one kept moving, firing, and pushing forward. Its second war was over, but its story was far from finished. As borders shifted and alliances changed in the post-war world, our Sherman tank changed hands again. By the early 1950s, it found itself sold to a South American army that desperately needed armored vehicles, but could not afford new ones. Here, it was plunged into a brutal, border conflict, fought not in open deserts or European cities, but in the dense, suffocating jungle. This new environment was a killer. The extreme humidity rusted metal, the thick mud-clogged tracks, and the poor quality fuel available would have choked most high-performance engines. Problems that would kill most tanks instantly were just another Tuesday for the old Sherman. But not this one. Its simple engine could run on almost anything, and its tough suspension crawled through mud that bogged down other vehicles. The soldiers who operated it gave it a new nickname: the Iron Donkey Slow. Incredibly stubborn, but absolutely unstoppable. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't fast. But when you needed a machine that would get you through hell and back, the Iron Donkey delivered. It survived the jungle, it survived the war, and it was put back into storage, waiting for the next time it would be called. Years passed. The 1960s and 70s arrived. Most World War II tanks were now nothing more than historical relics. Retired, scrapped for metal, or sitting silently in museum displays. The world had moved on to main battle tanks with composite armor, laser rangefinders, and computer-assisted targeting. But in one small South American nation, the old Shermans were kept running. Why? Because they were simply too reliable to replace. The country couldn't afford a new fleet, and the old M4 South just kept working. Then, a violent civil war erupted. The nation turned on itself, and once again, this tank was rolled out of storage, refueled, rearmed, and thrown back into combat. Imagine the scene. A tank designed in the 1940s, now rumbling through streets in the 1970s. It was an antique, a ghost from another era, but its 75mm cannon still fired. Its machine guns still roared, and its steel hide still deflected small arms fire. Even after more than 30 years of service, the old Sherman pushed through urban firefights, taking fire, returning fire, and refusing to break down. The young soldiers fighting in the conflict couldn't believe this relic was their main battle tank. But it did the job. It survived its fourth war. By the 1980s, this tank had become a living legend within the small army that owned it. It was nearly 40 years old. Most of the men who originally built it were retired or had passed away. Young soldiers who were assigned to it didn't believe the stories. They didn't believe it could still run, until the mechanics turned the key, and the old engine roared to life with a cloud of smoke and a deafening rumble. Then came another regional conflict, a short but violent border skirmish. The army needed every vehicle it had. The old Sherman, now a patchwork of spare parts scavenged from junkyards and other retired tanks, was sent into combat one final, unbelievable time. It was an absolute dinosaur on a modern battlefield, but it trundled forward. Bullets from assault rifles pinged harmlessly off its hull. Explosions from mortar rocked it, but the engine kept turning. The tracks kept moving. The cannon kept firing. By the end of the conflict, the dust settled, and the old warrior was still. This World War II relic had survived its fifth war. No modern jet, drone, or missile from that era could ever claim such a long and varied combat record. So where is this legendary tank today? It sits in a quiet storage depot, maintained by a small military unit that honors its history. It's no longer on active duty, but it's far from dead. The engine still starts on the first try. It still drives, its turret still traverses, and its cannon mechanism still works, just like it did in 1942. The mechanics who look after it say it's actually easier to maintain than many of their modern, computer-filled vehicles. In a world of advanced digital warfare, cyber attacks, and stealth technology, a machine built with wrenches, bolts, and raw American steel continues to live, and yes, if needed, it could still be driven into battle today. Some machines fade into history, others become legends. And then there are those rare creations that simply refuse to die. The World War II tank that survived 5 wars reminds us that sometimes the simplest, most reliable machines are the ones that last the longest. They outlive the people who built them, the enemies they fought, and the very idea of what is considered modern. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Silent Conflict for more untold military mysteries, forgotten weapons, and incredible stories that time tried to bury. Thanks for watching. This is Silent Conflict, signing off.